Okay, thanks for waiting. We're on air now in Technology and Skills in Civil Construction webinar hosted by Civil Contractors New Zealand and Teletrac Navman. Thanks for attending. So we'll get straight into it. I'm going to introduce the presenters. I'm not named on this slide, but I'm Fraser May. I'm Civil Contractors New Zealand's Communications Advisor. We've got Peter Silcock here, who is the Chief Executive of Civil Contractors New Zealand. Good afternoon, Peter.
Hi, Fraser. How are you?
Good, thanks. And we've got Jim French, who is the Construction Industry Specialist from Teletrac Navman. Now, just as I covered before, for those who have arrived a little bit later, we may well get around to questions at the end of the presentation. If you've got any pressing questions, feel free to hit the chat function, the little speech bubble on the right with the 3 dots, or you're welcome to email me at fraser@civilcontractors.co.nz, and then we'll field the questions and any follow-up that we have. So this presentation covers the Construction Industry Survey findings, and I'll pass it over to Peter Silcock to let you know a little bit about what the Construction Industry Survey is all about, and to get on to his section about the workforce in New Zealand's civil construction sector. Please take it away, Peter.
Thanks, Fraser. Thanks, Fraser. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Jim and his team from Teletrac Navman for the great partnership they have with CCNZ. As Fraser said, today we're going to be presenting the outcomes of some of the outcomes of the Teletrac Navman CCNZ Construction Industry Survey from 2018. It's actually the second year that we've done this survey with Teletrac Navman, and it provides us with really valuable data and statistics which we can quote in our communications and submissions to government and the like. And it enables us to, now that it's the second year, track some of the changes that are occurring in the industry, and of course helps us direct some of the work that we do for our members. Earlier this year at our conference in early August, we released the procurement section of the survey, and as a result of that, we got some really good media uptake, and so that led to CCNZ being, I guess, at the lead in terms of discussions with government about what needed to change in terms of procurement. As a result of that, we've seen government commit to a reset of government procurement. They're looking at the establishment of a new infrastructure body, and they're also reviewing the government procurement guidelines. So we're continuing to work with government, but I guess it's just illustrates the power that a bit of information and numbers can have in terms of I guess, leading the discussion on some of these things. So just before we start, I just wanted to give a little bit of breakdown on the surveyed participants. So 85% of the participants in the survey are either owners, directors, or in a management role. So that's the group that we were targeting because they are best informed about the topics that the survey focused on. And the topics in the survey are developed jointly with in collaboration between CCNZ and Teletrac Navman, and that's what's happened over the last few years. But we are keeping some standard questions so that we are able to track those changes. And in some of the slides here, you will see the numbers in brackets, which reflect the previous year's numbers. Okay, the age of the participants in the survey probably reflects the level of seniority of the people we're targeting. So the majority of those people are between sort of 35 and 60-ish, maybe a bit more than that. And positively, I think that 57% of those companies effectively enterprises with less than 50 staff. So we're getting a good representation across the industry, including some of our small to medium enterprises. So overall, I think CCNZ and Teletrac were really pleased that we got a good cross-section of the industry responding to the survey. Through this webinar, we're now releasing 2 related sections of the survey, one on staff skills and availability, and the other on measurement and use of technology. Those issues are really entwined, and that's why we've chosen to represent them together. Obviously, technology and information management is something that's managed by people, and you need the skills to do that. So let's get into a little bit of the information around staff and skills availability that came through in the survey. So first of all, you can see the 2018 and 2017 numbers. Still looking at a very strong 2/3 of the participants looking to increase the number of staff over the next year. But more interestingly, we've got more, 8% compared to 2% last year, who say that they will reduce staff numbers. So we believe that's got to do with some of the change of focus that there is around NZTA's work, for instance, from state highways to more public transport and safety improvements. So quite a change in dynamic in the industry. And of course, some of that will be related to the well-publicised reduction in business confidence as well, which has come through since the election last year. While the last slide said 60% or more businesses would recruit more, if we look a little bit deeper at that, how many people would they recruit? We've seen a substantial reduction in the number of people that are required. So last year, 34% said they would recruit 6 or more staff, whereas this year that number is only 20% said they would recruit 6 or more staff. Just keep in mind, there are a lot of small businesses participating in this survey. So a number of, say, for instance, 5 people in a small business is quite a substantive number. The lack of skills and lack of motivated people are still by far the biggest barriers to recruitment in the industry. And that probably comes as no surprise. It came through strongly last year as well. The change in government's infrastructure spend and the general drop in business confidence saw this uncertainty on future projects this year exceeded the 4th issue, which was third last year, of course, people unable to pass drug tests. So yeah, that's really reflecting some of the realities of today, where there is a little less uncertainty about where things are at, particularly when you look back when this survey was conducted back in June and July of this year. Probably a little bit more clarity has come through just recently. And interestingly, looking down the list, meeting New Zealand immigration requirements has emerged in the list. It wasn't there last year at all. So that's showing that maybe more people are looking offshore, and perhaps there's been a bit of a change in government policy in terms of closer monitoring who might be coming into the country. Okay, on to the next slide. So yeah, while the numbers may have changed, I think the message is still very clear, and that's the civil construction industry is busy and we need more skilled and motivated people. The implications of that shortage of staff and skills is effectively, I think we're seeing more people switching between companies, although that may have slowed down a little bit with the change of government last year. But we are seeing some of the costs increasing as demand exceeds supply. And of course, that puts into question project outcomes, delivery dates, and profitability, etc. So, it creates a little bit more risk for businesses within the industry. And in this environment, people are adopting new technologies, but that is seen as a solution, but also a challenge because of the lack of people with skills. So a bit of a dichotomy there. So what's the real, so it's a real problem. What do we do? And I just wanted to talk about a few of the things that CCNZ are doing and that individual companies can do as well. Last year, after the survey, CCNZ launched our Epic Careers and Infrastructure program, and the goal of that is to target potential employees and their influencers. We want to raise the profile of careers in the industry. We want to sell the construction industry as a rewarding and diverse and viable career choice. And we also want to make sure that we retain workers within the industry. So keep the people we've already got. The reality is that as we have passionate people in the industry who are excited about their roles, but outsiders still see the civil construction industry as a last resort option in terms of employment. So what Epic helps us to do is tell our story better, and we've created a toolkit of resources that the whole industry can use, and really encourage people to get in there. This is not just something for CCNZ to do, it's something our members and our branches can be involved in as well. And what that toolkit does, it aligns our messages, and it's designed by and for the target market, which is sort of 18 to 35-year-olds. So we're not just seeking school leavers, but career changes as well. And it's visually strong. We use a lot of social media because that's where our target audience live. If you want some more information on Epic, then you can go to the website, which is www.epicwork.nz, or you can contact Fraser May, our communications advisor at CCNZ. Okay. The next thing that we've been doing is we've been talking to government about how it can help in terms of recruiting people into the industry. And this has got a lot to do with procurement. It was a major focus of the section of this survey that we released at conference. But what we're really talking about is how can we create a stronger pipeline of work that gives contractors the confidence to recruit and invest in people. And we're asking clients, and this is local and central government, to take leadership by requiring, recognising and rewarding those companies that develop the skills of people, and they need to do that through their procurement processes. And that has actually been picked up by central government with their construction skills action plan, and we'll see that come through more in the next year or so, I think, where government contracts certainly will be looking to see what companies are doing in terms of developing their people. And it's not just about employing a couple of people off the benefit, it's about how you're developing those people who might have been in your business for 10 or 15 or 20 years even, how those people being developed. The final thing that CCNZ has been doing around this issue is talking to government about accessing people from offshore. And we've engaged with them about the shortages that we face and making them aware that we need those people to effectively deliver on their election promises. So the Kiwi Builds, the infrastructure to support Kiwi Build, public transport projects, and the substantial increase in resilience and capacity of our Three Waters assets all demand people with skills. So Of course, with this government, the coalition government, it's not an open door policy, but they have committed to us that where there is a demonstrated need in the construction industry, that they will look at providing access to offshore people. And clearly for civil construction, we've got some expertise needed in areas, for instance, like perhaps light rail, and tunnelling are probably some of the key areas where we're not going to have all the resources sitting here in New Zealand. So the other thing that we know members are doing is looking at using technology, and they're adopting technologies to improve the productivity and increase the efficiency of their existing staff. So this is one of the key actions that individual businesses can take to address some of the staff shortages they have, making the most of what you've already got. Ultimately, those technologies can reduce staff numbers required, but they also drive us towards requiring a higher skilled workforce. We need to start looking at recruiting into the businesses people who are technologically ready, and to then invest in training. And what I mean by technologically ready is that staff don't have to know how to use a particular technology, but if they are technology minded and technically minded and are able to adopt and adapt new technologies quickly, that's the sort of person that we all want in our businesses. And really what I'm talking about with the technologies and information management is more what Jim's going to talk about today. So that's it from me, and over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Peter. And as always, it's an absolute pleasure to be working with CCNZ. We learn a little bit every time you speak, so thanks for that. I'll get straight into it. And obviously, you know, the industry is using a lot of technology. So the survey looked at what technologies, you know, we're looking at using, you know, in the coming years, in the next 12 months. So as we've established, technology is playing, you know, a huge part in New Zealand construction. There's a lot of technologies that are being investigated by the industry, and around 9 out of 10 businesses said they would be committed to resources looking into different technologies over the next 12 months. So technologies that the industry is comfortable with using already, and you know, more likely to be investigated: plant and equipment, integrated technology, machine control and guidance, UAVs. These have all emerged, you know, as technologies that the industry is going to look at over the next 12 months. 65% said plant equipment, 49% apps, 36% machine control and guidance. Interestingly, large businesses have in some instances significantly more sort of resources going into this, like BIM and then predictive analytics at the bottom. And I guess when there's an industry boom, plant and equipment becomes a little bit more difficult to get, and you know, prices may start to, you know, increase, and availability becomes an issue. So it's not surprising to see plant and equipment at the top of that list, and given it drives most of the industry anyway, the next technologies are complementary to that, I guess. In terms of what the most common technologies being used by the industry are now, top 3 most used are GPS fleet telematics, or GPS tracking. And you know, 79% of the large businesses are using it. One of the interesting figures is, you know, the low level of integration with project management software, and the value that's seeing in terms of where the technology is going over the next couple of years: plant, machine and asset monitoring, project performance and management. And then we see GPS-based survey equipment and machine control and guidance have very high percentage use in large businesses, and large businesses, you know, business with over 50 people and staff. So, and the future for these particular technologies is quite big. So I guess what we see is largely in line with what we've seen previously, and it's in line with other global studies that have been conducted around the industry and the technologies being used. And as I sort of alluded to slightly, integration is an area that seems to be quite low in percentage terms. So we have all these different technologies and different data sets that may well be sitting on their own and not integrated into given organizations a bigger picture of how the operation is flown, at a high level or on a base level, how individual projects are going, and what is my asset utilization? Am I getting enough utilization out of the assets? So I think there's areas there, that will probably start to change over the next couple of years in terms of integration. Labour productivity is the #1 area measured by businesses. So we were trying to understand how much measurement is going on in New Zealand industry. Measurement is important for the industry because you've got long-term projects with lots of moving parts. By measuring and having accurate insights day by day, project managers can be more proactive with resource allocation and cost control. It gives you the ability to share progress with clients and understand the true cost of a project. So the build-up of these insights give business historical data to refer to in future. So when I'm going to bid on projects, I have data that I can use, data that has integrity, which can be used in costing new projects, and also gives me information on how projects have progressed. So when we look at what's actually being measured, productivity is the #1 area, followed by maintenance costs, and then driver behavior. And when we look at these collectively, it's all very useful information. And the people who answered the survey have said, that the data is highly valuable. What's not high up is probably cycle times, but that may well be, depending on the type of contractor that we're dealing with. I guess the number that's nice to see is that, the percentage of people not using measurement or technology to measure is very low, which is gratifying. But I think overall, there's a lot of information being gathered that is used to help businesses. It's in terms of what we're measuring, labour productivity links back to what we seen earlier in terms of what people want apps to control. So we see with some of the contractors that are our customers in New Zealand, what they're looking for is an ability to reduce the cost of maintenance and improve productivity. And this is borne out in the survey results itself. Driver behaviour, obviously, when you have a lot of assets on road or off road, that's a hazard that you need to identify the hazards and risks associated with that. So seeing these numbers, it's sort of where we expected them to be in terms of, percentage wise and how they fit into the survey. So job site monitoring technology was deemed to be most useful in understanding where savings can be gained. Here we're trying to understand, what is it being used for? What's the net outcome of having all these technologies? And the biggest feedback we get is that understanding where savings and efficiencies can be gained, increasing customer satisfaction, evidence-based decision making, and more accurate employee timesheets. So I guess the survey indicates that the industry is retrospectively using measurement. What I mean is it appears that the top goals are achieved through analysing the data after the fact, such as for understanding where savings and efficiencies can be gained. There's probably opportunity to be using the data and the information in a more real-time setting. So if you see something, whether you're using an app or whether you're, online in a desk, or remotely, if there's something happening on the job site, if something is slowing down, there is the ability to make a real-time decision and adjust accordingly. So there are a lot of opportunities for to enhance the use of the data that's coming back from the systems. When we look tracking fuel, as for instance, we have some customers who put a bit of effort into tracking fuel and fuel use, and looking at different machines and how they compare across job sites, and how one machine compares with another machine on the same job site. There's information that can be extracted from the machines that can be a good indicator as to whether, is it operator training? I need to improve that. Are there different conditions that similar machines are working to at different sections of the job? So there's still a lot of data out there, that can be pulled into the system to give more insight. But it is good to see the amount of use that technology has been put to. So, and this comes back to what Peter spoke to largely, and it comes out in the results, which is good, because what we see is 9 out of 10 businesses felt that they could be getting better value from job site measurement technology that they're using. So how can businesses get better value? The first answer that stands out is, get staff to better understand the capabilities of the technology. So construction is changing. It's becoming a high-tech industry. There's lots of technology available that boosts productivity and improves health and safety and cost control, but it needs to be understood and used effectively. Otherwise, it's just becomes noise. So the skills needed for construction jobs will need to reflect the changes in technology. There's an opportunity for businesses to attract workers with an interest in technology. And the term that Peter uses, technology ready, is probably a good description, or technology able. As people who are going to be able to understand how to read data and action that data. So for technology creators and suppliers, the focus needs to be on providing on-ground support education for those that are to get the most out of it, which comes back to us as manufacturers, I guess. And the second answer, was if technology was better integrated with other systems. Again, this shows that businesses don't feel that the systems are sharing information as best they can. Integration, especially job site technology, feedback data on, utilization, productivity, fuel burn, etc., into a central portal will give business a more coherent and in-depth overview of what's happening on site, what materials are ready, what isn't being utilized, so decisions can be made in real time to move equipment from one place to another. There's nothing as irritating as not being aware that plant equipment are on a job site and it's not being used, where you have a shortage of plant and equipment on another job site. So we have customers who say one of the benefits of the technology is that when they look at asset utilization, they can make quick determinations to move equipment from one place to another where there's a more urgent requirement for it. So a couple of things that need to be done in terms of the various technologies that are being used on site is, people getting a much better understanding of how it's used, where it can be integrated, and getting more out of staff, particularly with large business. You can see 74% of large businesses, in answer one, and 69% in integration. So there's big opportunity around those two subjects, which correlate with some of the things that we've seen in relation to staff shortages. So a lot of what Peter said earlier on is reflected through the technology side of it. We have these technologies, but we don't necessarily have the people who are fully understanding it, or more to the point, we probably need to train people better to get a better understanding of it. That was the last of those slides, so thank you.
Magic. Well, thanks very much, Jim. I can hear myself through my microphone there. It's a bit disconcerting. But really appreciate your time on that. And also, Teletrac Navman, been fantastic to work with in putting this together. We really appreciate the time and it takes you put into this and the sponsorship of the survey and working with us to put it together and get people's perspective. We do have one question to start with. So for a business working with an annual turnover in excess of 6 million with 15 staff on multiple contracts, trying to find a suitable job costing system. Yeah, just a question about systems. I guess, probably we're looking at broad technologies here. Jim, do you have any knowledge of sort of suitable systems for job costing and scheduling, and what value those would bring to people that are using them?
Yeah, sorry, I'd muted myself. Look, there are a couple of systems out there in terms of scheduling, and what we've seen is a couple of different ways of doing it. One is, straight, just this is the job and this is the calculation, to come up with an end price or that, and then some of them allows you to feed data into them as a project progresses to see how it's trending. So there are a few different companies that offer that outside. Happy to follow it up offline rather than online, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds fine. In terms of just a couple more general questions, I'm not sure, Jim or Peter, either of you could probably field this one, but with technology, it's often kind of a case of backing the right horse, So there's a lot of different technology and system out there, and investing in one or the other. How do you make that choice? What's a good way to do that?
Hey, Fraser, look, I'd happy to make an initial comment on that anyway, and I'm sure that Jim would follow up. But one of the things about Civil Contractors New Zealand is about contractors working together, and it's just like with the last question. I think through the membership of CCNZ and the branch meetings, able to rub shoulders with people in similar sized businesses, not necessarily direct competitors, but I think there's always a lot of good sharing of information about what works and what doesn't. So, and if you're looking at a new technology, I think use the members of the branches to ask them, hey, have you looked at it? Have you used it? What do you feel about it? And I think that can that would add some real value in terms of getting a practical assessment of how various technologies might work.
I agree 100%. Peer knowledge from a manufacturer perspective. The best endorsement we get is a third-party endorsement. When somebody comes to us and says, one of our colleagues in the industry suggested I had a chat with you about telematics. That's the best reference we can get. So you're dealing with somebody who's in a similar position to you, who's already had the experience of looking at the different technologies. So I think, when you're networking with peers in the industry, finding more about the different technologies is a good option, and pushing the manufacturers into, doing quality presentations or demonstrations of their products, having a good look and getting all the questions that you're trying to address or, answer addressed by whomever you're talking to. But peer to peer, I think that's the best option.
Yeah, Jim, just another comment from Peter here. Jim, if people are asking Teletrac Navman, are you able to say, oh, well, here's a company of a similar size that would be willing to talk to you about their experience with the technology? Does that happen?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we do a couple of our, there are some of our customers who we do case studies with. They discuss in the case studies how they've used telematics. So we have a list of customers who, people who are happy to talk to other contractors in the industry who are looking at telematics.
Yeah.
Thanks. Right. So we've got probably one more question time allocated for that. But just before we get into that, I thought I'd let everyone know that following the webinar, we're going to release the results of the construction industry survey to the list. So thanks to all of you who signed up. And do feel free to address any further questions to me via email. So we'll follow up on those, and we'll get an answer back to you on your question in the next week or two. I think the last thing one last question we might cover is just in terms of what success looks like using technology. One or two examples. Jim, you got any examples of success, where technology has successfully been used in civil construction and what that looks like?
Yeah. So what we see recently, with some of our customers, I'll refer to two different parts of the one industry. One being the hire industry, and another is civil contractor. An understanding of asset utilization seems to be one of the areas that people are getting most return out of. Understanding where the assets are being used, how long they're being used for, and the ability to demonstrate to main contractors on a project that machines have been on site, they have been working on site. That's an important part of what we see, and improvements in driver behavior and a reduction in overall fuel costs. So managing those three areas, hire companies and civil contractors are coming back with the same information: workout safety, asset utilization, and improvements around preventative maintenance, being on top of the preventative maintenance. A lot of the smaller contractors, particularly around preventative maintenance, who haven't had systems in place, the automation of sort of notification around preventative maintenance is very important in that, and we see real benefits there.
Thanks very much for that. So this was Civil Contractors New Zealand's first webinar on technology. We may well run a follow-up session based on specific technologies later on. We're considering the options on that, so we'll let you know when we send out the FAQ. Just to wrap up, I'd really like to thank you, Peter, and you, Jim, for making your time available, and the preparation to do a bit of interpretation around the results of the construction industry survey. So thanks so much to both of you.
Thank you.
Okay, and thanks to everyone who attended the webinar. It's been a pleasure. I hope you were able to take something out of it, and we'll get back to you in the very near future with a bit of reporting on any questions. Once again, feel free to send them through to me, and otherwise, hope you have a lovely afternoon. Goodbye from Civil Contractors New Zealand and Teletrac Navman.